Welcome to School Britannia, the podcast where two Aussies teach Brits their own history. This is my friend Ellie.
And this is my friend Claire.
What did you do this week, Ellie?
Well, Claire, I went on a holiday to Manchester.
Lovely. How was it?
It was awesome. I saw Janelle Monáe.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
Why
she
was I invited?
Went with the person I love. Okay.
No.
I love you too.
Unacceptable.
That was really good. She was incredible. She was like super inspiring, and it was in this lovely like outdoor arena, and it was really balmy. It was maybe 4 degrees warmer than Edinburgh, so it just felt like proper summer.
Oh, lovely.
And it was just full of really cool people, really like supportive and fun and great.
That sounds amazing.
It was so good. I had a great time. And then we just hung out in Manchester on the Friday, and I really wanted to go to the Emmeline Pankhurst Centre.
Nice. How was it?
Well, it was closed, so I didn't get to go.
That's unfair.
That's okay. She wasn't super intersectional, so
True.
Maybe it's better that I didn't go.
Yeah, you just would have ended up being very frustrated.
Yeah, I would have been like, ugh, Emmeline, come
What
on.
are you doing?
But we learnt a little bit about Peterloo. Do you know about Peterloo?
I've heard of the Peterloo massacre, but I don't know a lot of the details.
Yeah, I didn't know very much either, and I still don't really. So it was this massacre that happened because people in the north of England were protesting against like unfair taxes. So corn laws, I think. It was to do with like how people imported grain to the UK, and like taxes on grain that you grew here versus taxes that you imported. And there was something that meant basically that if people were going hungry, it was too expensive to import grain, so people just starved.
Jesus Christ.
Something like that. So they had this massive protest, and the army just came in and massacred people.
Like women and children as well, yeah.
They just rode in on horses and killed people. And they called it Peterloo after Waterloo, because they were trying to like draw a comparison.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, and I've never really spent much time in the north of England, and it's just got such a different history to the south of England and to Scotland, obviously. So it kind of feels like its own country, even though it's not. I don't know. It's really different.
Interesting.
To London.
It's a massive place as well. I always forget how big the north is.
Yeah.
It's like most of England.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, highly recommend Manchester. It's like a tiny Melbourne. Like itty bitty. It's really like flat and like a grid.
Oh,
Melbourne's
smart.
Like, laid out like a grid.
Right. Next time I get homesick, that's where I'll head.
Yeah. And really, really good food. And oh my God, the coffee. Oh my God.
It's good to see you have your priorities in order.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What are you going to tell us about today, Ellie?
Well, Claire, I really, really enjoyed talking to you about Anne Lister last time.
And I loved hearing about her.
She's so cool.
Yes.
So I thought I'd talk about another autobiographer. So while Anne Lister had a really good reason for keeping her writings a secret and writing them in code, Olaudah Equiano worked really hard to get his book, The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano, seen by as many people as possible, because Equiano had been a slave who became a tenacious political activist, and he worked really hard with his book to bring down the slave trade. Yes! So, Claire, are you ready for the story of Olaudah Equiano?
Yes, so ready.
Yes! Okay, so Equiano was born in around 1745 in Ihiala in the Lagobo region of what is now southern Nigeria, or southeastern Nigeria. So Nigeria, I looked on a map, and Nigeria is on the Gulf of Guinea, which is on the west coast of Africa. And the Gulf of Guinea is where a thing called the Middle Passage starts. Have you heard about the Middle Passage?
I want to say I have, but I don't know any more than the fact that it sounds vaguely familiar.
It was basically the main passage for the transatlantic slave trade. So it was part of this triangular trade route that saw millions of Africans forcibly transported to America. So when I say triangular trade route, what happened was there were slaves coming or being taken from Africa to the Caribbean. Then sugar, tobacco and cotton that they produced was then transported to Europe on the other axis
Yes,
side
sure.
of the triangle. And
I
then,
understand geometry.
and then textiles and rum were sent to Africa. So it's a triangle.
I've heard of the triangle. I hadn't heard of the Middle Passage.
Oh, yeah. So the middle passage was really notorious because that was the nasty bit. Yeah, it was the nasty bit of the triangle.
But it's also what it's all built on.
Yeah.
Was because you couldn't have the other two bits of the triangle
without that bit.
Yeah.
Exactly. When he was about 11, Equiano and his sister were kidnapped and sold to slave traders. They were separated, and Equiano was forced onto a boat and shipped via the Middle Passage to Barbados.
Jesus, I bet it was a horrific experience.
Well, he can tell you because he wrote a book. Would you like to hear?
I don't. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
It's upsetting, but it's really important.
Exactly.
So he's been moved down into the hold of the ship. The closeness of the place and the heat of the climate added to the number in the ship, which was so crowded that each had scarcely room to turn himself, almost suffocating us. This produced copious perspirations, so that the air soon became unfit for respiration from a variety of loathsome smells, and brought on a sickness among the slaves, of which many died, thus falling victims to the improvident avarice, as I may call it, of their purchasers. So they were just jammed into the hold of the ship and left to die, basically.
It's really horrific. Have you seen the drawings of how they plan to fit as many human bodies into cargo holds in ships?
Lying down.
Yeah.
It's horrible. This was a really, really important part of his story to describe in the book, because a key argument in the abolitionist movement was the Zong massacre of 1781, which you might have heard of.
Yeah.
Basically, what happened was 130 enslaved people were murdered, were thrown overboard from their ship, the Zong, so that the owner could claim insurance.
Yeah, it was a really awful trial about the argument as to whether slaves were people or property and whether you could claim insurance on them. And it was really awful.
Horrific.
Yeah.
So it was really, really important that he talked about that part. So after a horrific voyage, Equiano was sold in a slave market. So here's another quote from that experience. On a signal given, as the beat of a drum, the buyers rush at once into the yard where the slaves are combined and make a choice of that parcel they like best. The noise and clamour with which this is attended, and the eagerness visible in the countenances of the buyers, serve not a little to increase the apprehensions of the terrified Africans, who may well be supposed to consider them as the ministers of that destruction to which they think themselves devoted. In this manner, without scruple, are relations and friends separated, most of them never to see each other again. So people were often taken together. So Equiano and his sister were kidnapped at the same time, but no one gave a shit that they were related, and they just sold them.
It's so awful. They just separated families without a care.
Yeah, without a care.
It's something that comes up a lot about whether or not women at the time had any understanding about or any control over slavery. Mm-hmm. And I've read reports like that of slave yards.
Yeah.
And women were absolutely complicit in buying slaves.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because they would go and buy household staff for themselves. Like, they were the ones choosing the female slaves for their household.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really awful.
Yeah, white women were absolutely complicit in the slave trade.
Yeah.
Terrible. Equiano was taken to Virginia, where he was bought by Michael Pascal, who was a lieutenant in the Royal Navy. Pascal took Equiano with him when he returned to England. So Equiano's still a kid. He's like 12 at this time. When he arrived in England, he saw snow for the first time. This is like a small moment in the book that is actually kind of lovely. He comes up on deck and he says to one of the crew members, like, "What's this?" And the guy's like, "It's snow." And Equiano's like, "I thought it was salt." And then he tastes it. It's quite sweet. Equiano didn't stay long in England. Pascal made him come along to the 7 Years' War with France.
Oh, great. What a fun place to take a 12-year-old.
Oh, God. I don't know much about the 7 Years' War. I read a little bit about it. I think it was basically like a colonial conflict. So Europe, I think England was allied with Prussia and France was allied with someone else, and I think they were fighting over colonies.
I mean, at the time, most of what they were fighting were imperial wars. Yeah. Whether they were fighting them on colonized land or not was all about being the biggest, baddest, imperialist
colonist
in
the bunch. Yeah. So Equiano became a sailor So he learnt how to sail a ship, but he also had to haul gunpowder to the gun decks and generally help out in battles. So
my God.
That must have been, he was a kid. So
War is awful and inappropriate, but to be a child and an enslaved child taken away from your home.
Forced
into battle.
Awful.
Christ.
So this went on for 8 years, even though it's the 7 Years' War. I'm not sure exactly how
it's like the 100 Years' War that didn't go on for 100 years.
So during this time, Equiano had himself baptised in the Church of England, and he learned English and he learned to read and write.
That's good.
Yeah. So the baptism part of that, I mean, that's all important, but the baptism part is actually particularly important because slaves were forbidden from becoming members of a formal Christian congregation. So
interesting.
Him being baptised was a bit of a coup. And becoming a member of the Church of England allowed Equiano to learn the language of Christianity and then use that language to argue for abolition.
Yes.
So use their own arguments against them, basically.
Amazing.
It was really
Which I guess
cool.
is why they wanted to keep them out of churches to begin with, because
It's power.
you don't want to be sitting next to an enslaved person while your priest is telling
Christian
you.
values.
Yeah.
Exactly. So at the end of that 8-year stint, so we're in about 1762, Pascal sold Equiano to another guy who shipped him right back to the Caribbean, where he was sold again. This time, he was sold to a Quaker merchant from Philadelphia called Robert King.
No, Quakers are not supposed to be involved in slavery.
What I thought.
And I don't like this.
No, and they make Robert King out to be this super merciful dude.
I don't care. You still owned a human being.
Exactly. But they so in 1765, Equiano was about 20, and get this is so rich. King promised him that he could buy back his own freedom for his original purchase price of £40. So King would allow Equiano to work and earn profit so that he could buy himself out of slavery from King.
You hypocritical Quaker piece of shit.
It's so awful. So yeah, he had to raise his original purchase price, which was £40, which is about £5,400.
So much money.
Today's money, yeah. And Equiano would not have been earning much.
Exactly.
He had to basically try and find his own time to do that.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's fucked. But he did it. It's incredible. So King tutored him in reading and religion, so he got like super, super, super literate. He was a really smart guy. So he earned enough money to buy himself out of slavery in 1766. And in 1768, he moved to England. But that said, he didn't stay very long. So because he was a sailor, he got jobs as a sailor on ships. So he sailed to the Mediterranean and the West Indies with a merchant marine. And this is so cool. In 1773, he went on an Arctic expedition. Expedition.
I didn't even talk
Oh
that.
man, I'm such an arts worker. Jesus. An Arctic expedition.
To show all the polar bears some art.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
It's very cool. So he travelled all over the shop. In 1775, now this bit's weird. He travelled to the Caribbean and became involved in setting up a new plantation colony on the coast of Central America. So he kind of became like a master for a bit.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I read a few articles that said it was really hard to escape that master-slave dynamic then.
Also, when it's the biggest economic system in the world at the time, you can't not be involved. It's like people can criticize capitalism and still be engaged with it because it's the system. It's so hard as an individual to step outside of that. But also, he's grew up being indoctrinated by these people.
Yeah.
And sure, he wanted his freedom.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, especially listening to the rhetoric of a bunch of racist people his whole life, he would have probably internalized some of what they were saying. Also, it's the fastest way to economic freedom is on the backs of other people, which, I mean,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think he's still young, so he's still working some shit out.
Yeah,
maybe.
I just think it's a really complex issue, and I don't think he's as complicit as a white person.
No, absolutely
actively engaging in that.
Absolutely not.
In the same way.
So it said that he tried really hard to make the condition of the enslaved people that he was overseeing better, and Equiano himself was badly mistreated. So a slave trader named Hughes tried to enslave him.
Jesus. Yeah. So that's the thing, is he can be a master and he's still not an equal with the other people.
Because he's a person of colour, so he's just a target.
It's still a racist system.
Exactly. But Equiano managed to escape in a canoe.
Thank God.
Equiano. Sailing skills. He returned to London and worked as a servant for a bit before finding employment with the Sierra Leone Resettlement Project. And that was a project set up to provide a safe place for freed slaves to live and work. But then I think I read somewhere that became really problematic because then it was like, oh, there's all these people of colour coming to England and we don't want them here.
Yeah.
So we're just going to move them to Sierra Leone. So he worked on that for a bit, but then he decided it wasn't good and he didn't want to work on it anymore. And he formed a group called the Sons of Africa, which campaigned for abolition through public speaking, letter writing and lobbying Parliament. In 1788, Olaudah Equiano led a delegation to the House of Commons to support William Dolben's bill to improve conditions on slave ships by limiting the number of enslaved Africans that ships could carry. So I guess starting small. Not small, that's really important, but maybe not going for abolition straight away.
Yeah, trying to change the system instead of trying to destroy the system.
Exactly. And then in 1789, Equiano published his autobiography with a lot of encouragement from other abolitionists at the time.
How old was he when he published it?
Good question. So 1789, and he was born in about 1745. So what would that be? He was about 45.
Cool.
Yeah. So proper grown up.
I can't wait till I turn 45 and I can call myself a proper grown up.
That's when everyone becomes a proper grown up.
Do I get a car?
Yeah, sure. Do you want one?
Yes, please.
So it was called The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano, and it became a bestseller and was translated into many languages. But this book wasn't just a straight-up autobiography. He didn't just sit down with, a nice idea of writing his life story. It was a really cleverly crafted piece of propaganda that Equiano toured all around Britain and Ireland in an effort to abolish slavery.
Smart.
So it was a really tactical piece of writing.
Yeah.
So I use the word propaganda because he was writing with purpose. This book, it was a first-hand account which was just a crucial tool in the organised political movement to abolish slavery. In fact, now this is a bit of a contested point. So it's even possible that Equiano's book isn't completely true. So it might not be a completely true account of his life story. So it's a really massive source of academic debate. But it's possible that Equiano wasn't born in Nigeria. An academic called Vincent Coretta found baptismal records and a naval muster roll document that listed him as being born in South Carolina. So, if Equiano was born in South Carolina, that makes his memoir even more remarkable because he knew he had to manipulate an essentially racist English public into supporting the abolitionist movement, which meant that he really had to describe the parts of the slave trade that were most emotive. So, the Middle Passage slave ships being kidnapped from his home and contrasting, what it's like to be a free person in your own country with then being enslaved. And that contrast was really crucial to his point.
Yeah, when you're working to dismantle slavery, I really don't care if you have to embellish and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you're working to that higher purpose.
Totally. And even if that story wasn't completely true for Equiano, which it might have been, it is contested, so we don't actually know, it definitely happened to millions of other people.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's really not that important.
It's not a particularly extraordinary story because it happens so frequently.
Exactly. And it was really important for him to describe that part because that's sort of the easiest for a public to get its head around.
Yeah.
That part of the story, it's really cut and dry, isn't it? That is completely evil to do that to another human being.
Emotive.
Yeah, really emotive.
Yeah.
So, in 1792, Equiano married Susan Cullen from Ely. After his marriage, Equiano visited Scotland, Durham and Hull. And his travels took him to Bath and Devizes, which I think is in Cornwall. He went to Ireland, he went all over the place. And his travels, this amazing speaking tour that he did with this book, They basically turned the public against the slave trade.
Amazing.
And raised awareness of the horrors of the trade and changed attitudes and inspired other people to join the abolitionist movement.
That's incredible. Sometimes you
really
just need
cool.
to put a specific human face on an issue, which is frustrating, but
yeah, it works.
People need to connect with things.
Equiano died in March 1797, but the slave trade in Britain didn't end until nearly a decade later. So on the 25th of March 1807, the Abolition of the Slave Trade Act passed into law. But although the act made it illegal to engage in the slave trade throughout the British colonies, trafficking between the Caribbean islands continued until 1811. And, you know, slavery is still an issue today.
Yeah.
It's not like that's disappeared.
No.
It's just gone underground.
Not even underground. It's pretty explicit in some places, but the African slave trade definitely died off. But then slavery in America continued for a long time.
Totally.
Yeah, in some really brutal ways.
Absolutely. So that is Olaudah Equiano.
Amazing. That's so incredible. I've never heard of him before.
Really? Oh, yeah.
I've heard of Thomas someone.
Oh, yeah.
Another freed slave who was from America, born in America, was a slave, got his freedom somehow, and came to England and Scotland to talk.
Cool.
I can't remember his last name. I've heard of him before, but I haven't heard of this guy. He sounds incredible.
Yeah, he's awesome. I studied him at uni. We did this course called travel writing.
Oh.
Anyway, Olaudah Equiano.
Amazing.
What a dude.
Yeah.
What will you be telling us about today, Claire?
Well, Eleanor.
Yes.
I spent more time this week than usual interacting with the NHS.
Oh, God.
And I lost a fight with some aspirin.
Oh, honey.
It was mostly boring, but I was thinking a lot about medical stuff.
Yeah.
And we can't really talk about aspirin because most of the history of aspirin is German, as you and I learned.
Yes.
From listening to This Podcast Will Kill You.
Oh, my God. It's such a good episode.
Yeah, it was
incredible.
amazing. So thanks to Britain's lack of contribution to that, and also the fact that I don't want to talk about aspirin because I fucking hate aspirin now, I was going through the list of things I'd had on the back burner to talk about.
Yeah.
I found this really cool lady.
Yes.
And I thought I was just going to tell you about this really cool lady, but it turns out I'm going to mostly tell you about Rickets. Rickets!
Jesus.
Rickets, and how this awesome, pioneering scientist lady called Harriette Chick.
Oh, what a good name. Harriette Chick?
Harriette Chick.
I'm
helped us fight Rickets.
Ready for this. Okay.
Yeah.
Ready for Rickets.
Get pumped. Yeah. So, what is Rickets?
I don't know. Something happens to your legs.
Yes.
Okay.
So, nutritional or classic rickets. Classic Rickets. This is going to be
Classic
conscientious
Rickets.
objectors all over again.
Pinchie-wishy-wishy. Classic Rickets.
Is a condition that affects bone development in children. Mm-hmm. It causes bone pain, poor growth, soft and weak bones that can lead to bone deformities.
Oh, no.
There's also a genetic version, but that's not really relevant to what I'm talking about today. So it can also affect the rest of your body, including your lungs, but mostly it's known for messing with your bones.
Oh, no, not my bones. I like them.
They're pretty cool.
I'm into them.
I'm fond of them.
Yeah.
So descriptions of rickets go back to the Greeks and the Romans in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, but it wasn't until 1645 that rickets really hits the big time. This was when it was first defined as a specific medical condition by David Whistler in his thesis for his medical degree from the University of Leiden in the Netherlands.
Ooh.
But Whistler was English.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I'm your Whistler.
So the title of his thesis translates from Latin as Concerning the Disease of English Children, which in English is called rickets.
English children?
Yes.
That's
so
interesting.
on the continent it was called the English disease because it was so prevalent in England.
Really?
Yes.
And why was that, Claire?
Many, many reasons. So Dr. Whistler went on to become president of the College of Physicians in England in 1684, and he died in the same year.
Oh, bugger.
Yes. I know, it was finally gets power, dies.
Yeah.
And his thesis about rickets was republished at the time, but no one really paid attention to it because it was really medical.
Okay.
So medically minded people knew about it, but the wider public was just no.
It wasn't a catchy thesis.
Exactly.
Okay.
It wasn't until 5 years later in 1650 or possibly in 1689. No one told me 5 years after what.
It was a really different day.
I know! The internet Harriette doesn't provide all the answers.
It's like 39 years.
Yeah. Some vagueness.
Anyway, in one of those years.
At some point in the 1600s, a Dr. Francis Glisson of Dorset published this whole ass book on rickets.
Whoa.
And that's when people really started to take notice.
Cool.
The report was really important because it was the first official statement from a medical college that was for both scientific and public audiences.
Okay, cool.
And it used physical evidence rather than just theoretical speculation.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So this is when the public finally had access to information about rickets.
Sweet.
Yes. So both Whistler and Glisson's reports recognise the multi-systemic impact of severe rickets.
Oh, dear.
Because, once it kicks in, it can really mess with your lungs and your ability to breathe. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, which is why it can kill kids, not just mess with your bones.
Okay.
So both of them recognised that, which at the time, 1600s, pretty big step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, John Locke, as in John Locke. John Locke?
John Locke.
John Locke.
Whoa.
Yes. Helped further our understanding of rickets at the time by publishing the results of an autopsy he performed on an infant who had died of rickets.
Aww.
It's I don't think of him as doing autopsies.
No, doing medical things.
People back then just did everything.
Renaissance men.
Yes.
Enlightenment Renaissance men.
Just not having to be qualified to perform an autopsy.
It's a bit of a worry.
I know.
Isn't it?
So Dr. Glisson went on to become the head of a bunch of important things in the mid-1600s, including the Regius Professor of Physics at Cambridge,
Cool.
President of the Royal College of Physicians,
Whoa.
and one of the first Fellows of the Royal Society.
Gosh.
Which is all important because his influence made rickets this really important English disease of pre-industrial revolution Britain.
Made rickets a star.
It did! Put rickets on the map. Because he knew about it and he understood it and he cared about it. So when he was in charge of all these organizations, he was like, hey, rickets.
Cool.
Yeah. Pretty sure that's
Cool
how he ran his
celebra.
meeting. Yeah. That's a much better way of putting it. Thanks. So his suggested treatments for rickets included incisions to draw out bad humours.
Oh no.
Blistering.
Bleeding.
A ligature of soft wool around the limb to prevent the return of blood.
Well, I guess at least that's friendly.
Yeah. The best one, though, and this isn't bad, it's quite cute, actually. So, for the correction of bone deformities, he proposed splinting an artificial suspension of the affected infant.
What? What does that mean?
Well, I have this great quote of him describing exactly what you need to do.
Okay.
The artificial suspension of the body is performed by the help of an instrument cunningly made with swathing bands, first crossing the breast and coming under the armpits, then about the head and under the chin.
Wow.
Then receiving the hands by two handles, so that it is a pleasure to see the child hanging pendulous in the air and moving to and fro by the spectators.
So they're hanging from a thing?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They're just kind of chilling. It's kind of those little bouncy things that babies hang out in these days, like a old school version of that.
You're being suspended from your chest under your arms.
Yep.
That can't be great.
Probably not.
Wow.
He thought it helped restore the crooked bones and to lengthen the short stature of the body that often came with rickets.
I had a French teacher when I was in year 12 who was like, the best thing you can do for back pain is to hang from monkey bars. And she didn't sound like that. I'm completely making up her accent.
Beautiful.
But yeah, she was like, you have to hang from monkey bars every day, girls, to stretch
every
out.
day.
Yeah, to stretch out your spine.
They often put you in traction when you hurt your back. It's quite an old-fashioned way to deal with back pain is to suspend you so it kind of elongates your spine and there's no pressure on it. But
maybe they were both right.
I'm going to say he was probably wrong. He never managed to cure rickets. So,
right.
Yeah. So rickets was a huge public health issue. It affected children all over the UK, although it was most prevalent in countries in the southwest.
Weird.
Yeah.
How do you get rickets?
Well,
right. Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. Spoiler alert for this big surprise. Not really. I thought you knew. You get rickets from a lack of vitamin D.
Oh, yes. England. The English disease.
Yes.
Southwest.
Well, yes. So this takes us back to episode 2 when you talked about frost fares, Ellie, and weird weather. So the theory is that Britain had unusually cold and wet weather in the first half of the 1600s.
Oh my god.
And that, the really, really cold winters when the Thames kept freezing over.
Oh my god.
And the summers that were really rainy meant that there was just not enough sunlight for these kids.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
They gave them rickets.
Yeah.
That's mad.
And also, I didn't know this, but you get vitamin D from your food.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
And it's a really rare vitamin because it can't be fully metabolized until you get sunlight on your skin.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Weird.
Yes. It's really interesting.
I didn't know that human beings are one of the few animals that need to eat vitamins. So other animals, like dogs, for example, they don't need to eat vitamin C to get vitamin C.
Rude.
They just get it from eating whatever.
Yeah, there's some later studies they talk about they have to really specifically choose the animals they use to test dietary deficiencies because not all of them... Yeah,
guinea pigs
and
like
rats.
Humans, weirdly.
Yeah, because it's not common. I didn't...
Yeah.
That's...
Isn't that mad? It's like chimps, guinea pigs and us need to eat vitamins.
Oh, it's so much work.
Everyone else can just eat whatever the hell they want. So that's why we get scurvy.
Yeah.
And stuff. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's all totally relevant. Yeah. So obviously at the time they didn't know that and they were just like, ooh, it's all a manifestation of sickness of the soul, aka God's mad at you and miasmas and stuff. But yeah, lack of vitamin D is what causes rickets.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really weird that kids in these sunnier counties in the southwest were getting sick. There was other reasons, as always. One of them theories is social practices and socioeconomic factors.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. So there's a quote, "In the time of King Charles I, rickets was almost epidemical, few families escaping it."
Wow.
It was, like, really common. And this was because of a few things, mostly to do with who went outside. Yeah. So rich families kept their kids inside because outside was where the peasants go and do their work.
They got rickets.
Yeah, and because of fashion and practicality, you really laid up when you went outside.
So you never got any sunlight.
So you never got any sunlight.
But peasants got lots of sunlight.
Peasants got lots of sunlight.
The only thing that they got lots of.
For free.
Sunlight and work.
Yeah, exactly. But another susceptible part of the population would have been those involved in the home-based textile industry, aka our Luddite friends.
What?
Yeah.
Poor Luddites with rickets.
Yeah, because those in that situation, like the whole family would often get involved in the work.
Right.
And it was like dawn till dusk, but it all happened inside your like tiny little croft house with its tiny little useless windows, and you never went outside.
That's mad.
Yeah, so they were really susceptible to rickets. From his experience in the Midlands, one Sir John Floyer, who is, I don't know who he is, but he said this in 1706, that no distemper is more frequent in infants than the rickets.
Gee.
It was just everywhere.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it keeps kicking around into the industrial era when it becomes a disease of industrialised towns.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, so there were lots of cases of, like, severe rickets, but there was also just, like, low-grade rickets that was endemic to these kids. It was just
low-grade rickets.
Yeah.
Bargain rickets.
yeah. Where, like, you might, on the outside, look like you had developed a normal skeleton.
Oh, yeah.
But you would have some level of, like, bone weakness.
Oh, okay. Like you break your bones easily or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Samuel G., an English physician and paediatrician, carried out a survey of children under the age of 2 years at the Great Ormond Street Hospital and found that 1 in 3 showed some feature of rickets.
Jesus.
And in another survey in Clydeside in 1884, every child examined apparently had some sign of the condition.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. So, like, in the 1800s, like, late 1800s, it was just all the kids had
Everyone
all the rickets.
had rickets.
Yeah.
Does Tiny Tim have rickets?
Possibly.
In A Christmas Carol?
I think he's missing a leg. Is that not?
Oh, is that it?
Yeah. I can't quite remember.
Maybe due to rickets.
Yes, totally. I assumed an industrial accident from being forced to work from the age of 6, but
could be that.
Possibly rickets. One report I read in the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine said that you can tell all the kids in the Victorian era had rickets just by looking at photos of them.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they didn't really explain or elaborate on that, but I just thought it was really interesting and
they
really...
just look a little bit feeble or something.
Yeah, really speaks to the prevalence of it.
Gee.
Yeah. So around this time, they start to get a better handle on what causes rickets and how to treat it. So an 1882 copy of Queen's Dictionary of Medicine talks about poor hygiene and nutrition being the leading factors. Okay. But it doesn't hit on any specific nutritional deficiencies, just general bad nutrition.
Well, that's tricky, isn't it?
And advocates for lots of soap and water and good ventilation.
I mean, that can't be bad.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you're not hurting anyone by being like, have a bath.
Yeah.
Then in 1857, Jon Snow of Bathroom Episode fame,
Jon Snow.
had suggested rickets was being caused by the adulteration of baker's bread with alum, which is some chemical compound that they started adding to bread.
I guess that probably wasn't great.
Probably not.
No.
Wasn't what was causing rickets, but I mean, he got lots of other stuff right, so fair play to him. Yeah. I mean, it's a good guess. Was probably doing something else terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In the late 1800s, William McEwen, working in Glasgow, had lots of experience with rickets and started to treat leg deformities with bone surgery.
Ooh. Ow.
So he believed a lack of sunlight outweighed nutritional deficiencies as the cause, and described some children being raised in Glasgow as, quote, being shut out from the light partly by the height of the houses and partly from the fact that even the sun's rays, which do manage to struggle through the canopy of smoke which envelops them, are so diluted that they are of a comparatively little value.
Oh, no.
Which I think basically describes every industrialised town at the time.
Yeah.
So basically, rickets existed in lots of England, centralised in industrial towns, but also in these little pockets in industrialised towns in Europe. It's like Europe was mostly fine except for these industrialised towns where smog, large buildings...
blocked out sunlight.
Yeah. Yeah. So even though he recognised the importance of sunlight, McEwen still focused mostly on the bad air. Ooh. So, like, people still had...
miasma.
Yeah, really into the miasma. But other people really took up the whole sunlight thing, two people in particular. One was Hugh Owen Thomas, a Welsh surgeon who is considered the father of orthopaedic surgery in Britain.
Cool.
And the other was Florence Nightingale of nursing fame.
Good old Nighties.
Yeah. So both were really big into the health benefits of sunshine, fresh air and cleanliness and applied this to a hospital setting. So they set a standard for and advocated for hospitals that focused on access to sunlight, the outdoors and cleanliness. And they were called sunshine hospitals.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, they were often built by the sea for like maximum healthy air because like, I don't know about Thomas, but Nightingale still believed in miasmas, but the way she fought them was still really helpful for bacteria control. So
great.
It worked.
Yeah, the ocean rocks.
Yeah. But this was great when applied to kids with rickets because if you get it early enough, you can halt and even reverse the effects of rickets.
Reverse the effects?
Yeah, because bones keep growing all the time. So if you can get them early enough, kids just kind of bounce back.
Awesome.
Like little bouncy balls. They're fun. Yeah. So the sunshine movement, as it's called in literature, was in full swing before there was a scientific explanation for its effectiveness. But in 1889, the British Medical Association issued an official report linking rickets to large industrial towns. And a year later, Dr. Theobald Adrian Palm published a report highlighting the inverse relationship between sunlight exposure and rickets, which was based on a research trip he did to Japan.
Cool.
Where no one had rickets.
Right, because they went outside.
Yes.
Yay.
Then in the winter of 1918-1919, a paediatrician in Berlin had success treating children with rickets using ultraviolet lamps.
Cool.
Yeah, so he conducted these experiments where he exposed only one arm.
Yep.
But then both rickety arms were cured.
Because you just absorbed the vitamin D.
Yeah, so he deduced that irradiation of the skin had released a chemical into the bloodstream that had the power to heal rickets at a distance.
Cool. He was right.
Yeah, not totally wrong. Just, phrasing it in a way that made it sound more like magic, less like science. So vitamins had only been discovered a few years earlier in 1912, and everyone was getting really interested in using them to cure stuff. As the importance of sunlight was beginning to be understood, cod liver oil also started to be put forward as a treatment option.
Delicious.
Is it? I've never had it.
You burp up fishy breath for days. No, maybe not days. A while. Quite a while.
Tasty.
So gross. So very gross.
So, cod liver oil is high in vitamin D, but that's not why it was originally used. It had been used in folk remedies for years, particularly in coastal areas, obviously. And it was first recommended medically by Thomas Percival in Manchester in 1789 for treating rheumatism. But around the late 1800s, there was this move towards getting more fat in children's diets, sort of generally.
Awesome.
Hence the interest in cod liver oil, because it's really fatty.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Then came the animal dietary experiments.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. In 1889, Sir John Bland Sutton, a surgeon with an interest in zoology, noticed the lion cubs at the London Zoo had rickets.
Oh no, not the lion cubs!
No, poor little kittens. Oh. So the affected cubs were existing off a diet of boneless lean meat.
Okay.
And Bland Sutton was like, I'll give them some fat. That's the ticket. So he added crushed bones and cod liver oil to their diets. And they fully recovered. So
really?
He was like, look, I've solved rickets. You just have to add more dietary fat. Close but no cigar.
Okay.
Because he had chosen cod liver oil just for its fat content.
But actually it has vitamin D in it.
It was the vitamin D in it that was helping them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in 1919, Edward Mellanby, an English physician, conducted the earliest definitive experimental study exploring the role of diet in the development and treatment of rickets. He fed puppies different diets. No. But he concluded that it was a fat-soluble vitamin A that was preventing rickets. still his work was the first step in establishing that, like, diet definitely had a role to play in, like, certain deficiencies.
Yeah.
Scientists in America, led by Elmer McCullum, furthered Mellanby's work. And despite originally coming to the same conclusion, they eventually narrowed it down and isolated the vitamin responsible in 1918. And since it was a new vitamin and the fourth to be discovered, it was called vitamin D. Aha! Yeah. What they didn't discover was the link between sunlight and vitamin D. That came later in, like, 1925.
Really? Okay, not heaps later, though.
No.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So you might have noticed, despite a brief cameo from Florence Nightingale, I haven't mentioned any badass ladies coming in, swooping in. So at the time, everyone was still debating whether it was sunlight or diet. They were like, but I have diet answers. Everyone's like, but I have sunlight answers. And basically, Dame Harriette Chick comes in and is like, I'm going to use science to solve this.
Oh, yeah, Harriette.
Yeah. So let me tell you about Harriette.
Yes.
Harriette was born on the 6th of January, 1875, to a very strict Methodist family.
Oh, God. Okay.
Her father owned property and sold lace.
Sold lace?
Yes.
Oh, that's nice.
But he allowed very little fun, but lots of praying.
And lots of lace.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. He didn't like frivolities, so I doubt the kids got the lace. I think he just used it for the money.
Damn it.
Harriette was one of 7 daughters, and all 7 girls attended Notting Hill High School, which was a girls' school that, very strangely for the time, had a focus on science.
Cool.
Yeah. So Harriette and her sisters were all, like, super smart, and she and 5 others all went on to study at university.
Oh my God.
Degrees. Yeah. I don't know what happened to the one rogue sister who didn't go to university.
She rebelled.
Yeah, I like to think she was a badass, and I identify strongly with her.
Right.
I don't know what actually happened to her. But Harriette studied science at the University College London. She won a bunch of awards for botany.
Oh, nice one.
Yeah, and it was just super rare for women to study what was called pure sciences at the time. So even though their science-focused high school education, I don't think any of her sisters really went on to study anything that would have been classed in this strange hierarchy as pure science.
Yeah.
One of her other sisters did become a very famous statistician, though. Statistician. Yes.
Very cool.
Maths. She did a lot of maths.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Nice one.
But there was, of course, backlash for Harriette daring to be a woman in spaces where women had not ventured thus far.
I mean, women do suck. So,
they're
fair enough.
Terrible. How dare she have knowledge and skills? So in 1913, she was one of the first of 3 women to be admitted into the Biochemical Society.
Cool.
After it had been renamed and they changed the policy to admit women. But back in 1905, she was selected for a Jenner Memorial Studentship at the Lister Institute.
Cool.
And at that point, 2 staff members implored the Lister Institute's director to reconsider on the basis that as a woman, she would be unsuited to the work.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and the director was like, yeah, I'm gonna hire her anyway, so fuck off.
Yay.
So this was like a really big deal because the Lister Institute was the only medical research institute in Britain at the time.
The only one?
The only one.
Wow.
Yeah. It was paid for with Guinness money.
Great.
The Guinness Brewing family set it up.
Go Guinness.
Yeah. So her work in the beginning focused on bacteriology and hygiene.
Nice.
In which she did groundbreaking work. In 1908, whilst at the institute, she formulated Chick's Law.
Oh, yeah. What
Right?
is Chick's Law?
Something to do with the relationship between the kill efficiency of organisms and contact time with a disinfectant.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Great.
I don't know what that means.
Me neither.
We still use it today. It was added to and is now called the Chick-Watson equation. But
That is such a good name.
I know.
I like Chick's Law better. I think.
Chick's Law is amazing. But then at the beginning of World War I, the Lister Institute, which was a private organisation, volunteered its services to the Army Medical Department, and her research focus shifted from hygiene to nutrition, and specifically to diseases caused by nutritional deficiencies.
Like Rickets.
So, interestingly, the discovery of vitamins in 1912 actually happened at the Lister Institute by a visiting Polish researcher.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
God, this Lister Institute sounds amazing.
I know. So from like really early on, she'd taken this like very collaborative approach to research in her career, which is now the norm, but was a little bit less common at the time. And she would often head up research teams and stuff, which is cool.
Cool. So all the male researchers just wanted glory.
Yeah, and she just wanted the answers and the
nice.
science. Yeah. So this served her really well when in 1919 they set up this team of researchers to study the relationship of nutrition to childhood bone diseases in post-war Vienna. Yeah. So she headed up the team along with another female scientist who was an Australian named Elsie Dalyell.
Cool.
Dalyell.
Cool.
Yeah. And their team included a whole bunch of women.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
I know. So the two of them went over to Vienna to, had a less specific focus on rickets at the time and were more generally just looking at bone diseases in kids.
Yes.
But with a nutritional focus. And at the time they were conducting this research, the use of cod liver oil in medicine had, fallen out of favour. Mm-hmm. There'd never been any scientific proof for its effectiveness. Mm-hmm. And there was this stigma attached to using organs in medicine because they were seen as medieval and, quote, more suited for the witch's cauldron in Macbeth than for scientific treatment.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah. So everyone was just sod cod liver oil, even though it was actually really useful. And all the studies to that point had been done, on diet and rickets had been done in animals, but there had been no human trials.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and all the stuff with sunlight had mostly been observed except for the study in Berlin.
Yeah, with the guy with the ultraviolet.
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy with the arms. The guy testing the child's arms. Yeah. So, her research was really important because it kind of brings together all these disparate ideas and the competing ideas of sunlight and vitamins and also the, stuff that was all, bits of research but had never been put into one big trial. Yeah. So they're invited by the director of the University of Vienna's Kinderklinik, which is the children's hospital. Yeah. To set up a clinic there. And the hospital was already this model of cleanliness, and they had this carefully controlled food prep system for the patients. So it was a really good place to do trials because it was a really controlled environment.
Great.
But it was hard to find funding in post-war Austria.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, especially when you're saying things like experimenting on children. Doesn't go down well.
Yeah.
But the Society of Friends, aka the Quakers, who I just love mentioning at any opportunity,
they're pretty great.
Even when it's to criticise them for their involvement in slavery.
Exactly.
Were a major supporter of the study, and they got further help from the Red Cross societies and the Lister Institute itself.
Cool.
They did a bunch of controlled studies and proved that, yes, rickets is indeed caused by dietary deficiencies and could be cured by cod liver oil and UV light.
Amazing.
Yeah. I read an article that said, one could say that the project discovered nothing absolutely new, and that is true, but at the same time it reconciled a whole field of previously warring ideas that seemed to be in contradiction to each other.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so it was really important because it basically brought together everything in a way that the government could finally treat rickets at a large scale. And you can prevent it. It's not hard.
No.
Yeah.
We just didn't know.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Rickets.
And then, Harriette just went on to keep being amazing. She was made the head of a new division of nutrition at the Institute, and the rest of her research concentrated on deficiencies of water-soluble vitamins.
Oh, yeah, right.
And then she served as secretary of the League of Nations Health Section Committee.
The League of Nathans.
It's called Nathan, but she was in charge. She was a founding member of the Nutrition Society and served as president for a while. Wow. And then in 1949, she was made a Dame of the British Empire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then she never married and lived to be 102.
Shit!
Yeah, she was so cool.
Harriette chick.
Yeah, she just came and was like, let's just fix rickets. It seems like we mostly know what's going on. Let's just make it official and, actually help these children.
What a superstar.
Yeah,
That's
so cool.
so good, Claire.
Yeah. Do you want to know what's happening with rickets now?
Do people still get it?
Yeah. In 2013, 2014, there were fewer than 700 cases in England. Mm-hmm. But in 2019, the number of cases hospitalised was said to be the highest in 50 years.
Jesus.
So people are getting more rickets. I remember a friend back in Melbourne telling me that there was this problem with law students getting really severe vitamin D deficiencies that were causing early stages of rickets because they spend so much time inside studying.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But you also need quite a small amount of sunlight
to not
get rickets, but you need to get it regularly.
I've had doctors tell me that everyone has a vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah.
Even in Australia.
Because you also need to be getting it from your diet. It's not just the sunlight. You have to making sure you're eating foods that are high in vitamin D and then getting the sunlight.
What is high in vitamin D?
Cod liver oil.
Cod liver oil.
I actually don't know.
Let's look it up.
There's lots of things. So what is high in vitamin D?
Fatty fish, like tuna, mackerel, and salmon. Foods with fortified vitamin D, so dairy products, orange juice, soy milk, cereals. Not for the vegetarians. Beef liver.
Well, it's one of the things the government started doing after the study was adding fortified vitamin D to foods because
not everyone was getting it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And when you have like rationing and stuff going on, it's easy to do that.
Yeah, right. Egg yolks.
Oh, cool.
And cheese. So I think we're probably
cheese.
okay.
Yeah.
Because we both eat a lot of cheese.
It's one of those things where as a vegan, you probably have to watch out for it as well. I know there's like...
None of those are vegan.
There has to be some because... I know it's only vitamin B12 that vegans can't get, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the only one that you can't find in any plant-based product.
I wonder if vitamin D supplements are vegan. Oh, it's lactose-free, so suitable for vegetarians and vegans.
Oh,
there you go.
Sweet.
Wow, Blair.
Yeah.
Cool.
But there was this huge issue with vitamin D deficiency among Britain's South Asian communities in the 60s and 70s. So basically it was this super racist colonial hangover where there was a kind of influx of South Asian immigrants, and a lot of them came over with rickets. But the way the government...
rickets? Oh,
yeah.
no.
Or they developed rickets when they got here.
Okay.
It's a mix of the two, but basically the government's approach to it was super racist. The doctors were given a choice between rickets being Asian, because they called it Asian rickets, even though it was just rickets. So rickets could either be Asian or English, and in other words, it could be caused by the dietary and dress choices of Pakistani, Bangladeshi and Indian immigrants and their families, or it could be English and caused by the unfortunate climate and northern latitude of the UK.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty sus to me. Jesus.
But it was basically used as this assimilation tactic where it was like, well, you can't dress that way and you can't eat those foods and you can't practice your culture because you have to be more English or else you'll have rickets.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Okay. It was really awful.
So gross.
Yeah. So even though we know exactly what causes rickets and stuff now, still kids getting rickets today, it was still weaponized basically as a way to force immigrants to assimilate in a really racist way.
I mean, you could just give everyone vitamin D tablets. Would that not be a great solution?
No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. No. Jesus. Why would you do that when you could use it as an assimilation tactic? Yeah. Ugh. But Harriette Chick did some great work helping us at least understand what it is and how it works.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And that's why you and I have strong bones.
And healthy minds. Thanks, Harriette Chick.
Thanks, Harriette.
And Olaudah Equiano. You guys...
teaching us stuff.
You smashed it.
Yo. So, if you want to hear some more history tidbits, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Please rate, review, and subscribe so other history buffs can find us.
If you want to know what sources we used, please go to our SoundCloud page. The link is in the description.
And today's homework is to eat some vitamin D and get some sunlight.
You can just get it at your local pharmacy.